I'm gonna tell you a story about a time when I ordered some fun hats on Amazon as a joke for my friends and wound up getting scorpion venom. And how I also got a valuable lesson about Amazon's monopoly over everything that's bought and sold on the internet. So it starts a few years ago when my friends and I got really into sweating it out in the sauna. I had this great idea to buy everyone sauna hats. So I went on Amazon Marketplace and I poked around until I finally hit the jackpot. These sauna hats emblazoned with an oil rig and the word oligarch in Cyrillic. I bought 4 of them from a seller called Russian Bear. Finally, I get a package from overseas plastered with over 20 stamps. I open it and there are no hats. Instead, there's a vial of a medicine called Vitatox, which is a cancer drug manufactured in Cuba and illegal in the US, made from the venom of the blue scorpion. I posted about this on Twitter and it went viral. But when all the fun died down, I was left without my oligarch hats and instead with a burning question. Why is the Amazon marketplace so chaotic? And who is benefiting from all of this mayhem? When I investigated, I learned that the Wild West nature of Amazon Marketplace is in many ways directly related to the company's tightening stranglehold on our economy. A new lawsuit from the Federal Trade Commission accusing Amazon of being a monopoly is providing us with some answers for the very first time. Behind my scorpion venom story lies a whole host of exploitative practices that are degrading the user experience, raising prices across the internet, and crushing competition, all ultimately geared toward making Amazon the only game in town. In order to understand why Amazon's consumer experience is so sloppy, I went to Stacy Mitchell, co-executive director of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Stacy told me that my story was definitely on the weird side, but not that surprising.
It's just confusing and it's a big mess. And it's degraded quite sharply over recent years, and I think that's a real indication of monopoly power, that Amazon does not face the discipline of having competitors that it has to try to keep up with.
But it's not just a matter of laziness. Stacy told me that Amazon actually leverages the mess to get what it wants.
Amazon really benefits from this kind of chaos and this free-for-all. And the reason is that it puts authentic, legitimate businesses, it destabilizes them. They really kind of struggle in that environment to find their footing and to make connections with customers because they're constantly being kind of knocked over by these underhanded sellers.
I originally just wanted to know why Amazon is so chaotic and spammy these days, given that it probably has the resources to clean up its act. But after talking to Stacy, I realized that the mayhem is connected to how Amazon squeezes and bullies sellers on its site, which is a major component of the FTC's allegation that Amazon is acting as a monopoly and breaking the law.
So this lawsuit is fundamentally about protecting free and fair competition. And the U.S. antitrust laws prohibit firms from using their monopoly power to punish or preclude or prevent competition. And that's what our lawsuit lays out that Amazon has done.
The FTC's case argues that Amazon has a monopoly in online commerce and that Amazon is engaged in a set of strategies to preserve that monopoly. And a central part of this argument that the FTC is making is about the control that Amazon has over sellers.
People who want to sell things on the internet really don't have much choice other than to use Amazon. Over 150 million Americans are Amazon Prime members. Prime members get great deals from Amazon, especially free and fast shipping. Why would they want to shop anywhere else? Third-party sellers trying to hack it on Amazon's marketplace are increasingly reliant on 2 things: the buy box and Prime eligibility. These 2 pieces are key to the federal government's case against Amazon's monopoly. The coveted buy box is the fancy buy now, add to cart icon you see on product pages. If you, as a seller, are eligible for it, you stand a much greater chance of cutting through the noise and grabbing customers' attention. But there's a catch. If Amazon finds out that a third-party seller is selling a product anywhere on the internet for a lower price, they remove the buy box and make it nearly impossible for users to purchase the item. Amazon has bots that trawl the internet, so this rule is hard to get around.
And because most sellers depend on Amazon for 80–90% of their sales, they can't risk that. And so what they end up doing is inflating their prices across the web so that they match the same price that they have on Amazon and don't run into this retaliation. But if you think about that, what that means is that consumers are paying inflated prices everywhere, no matter where you shop online.
This practice creates the illusion that Amazon has the lowest prices around, and it often does, but only by fiat. The FTC is accusing Amazon of artificially inflating its competitors' prices to maintain its monopoly power.
If you have a company that's both hiking prices and worsening services for customers, that's the type of situation that should create an opening for rivals to come in, to attract business, to grow. But it's really Amazon's exclusionary scheme that is keeping that from happening.
The second way third-party sellers can stand out is via Amazon Prime. This is the reason we all flock to Amazon, for the free 2-day shipping that Prime members get when they buy Prime items. But to be included in the Prime program, third-party sellers basically sell their souls to Amazon. They have to pay for costly Fulfillment by Amazon Services, or FBA, and that's on top of an already hefty transaction fee that they pay just for selling anything on Amazon.
We are definitely subsidizing, in many cases, our own destruction.
This is Nicholas Parks, a hot sauce aficionado who runs a third-party sales business called Snob Foods. Nicholas has very discerning taste.
Comes out of New Orleans from a French market, great restaurant in New Orleans.
Snob Foods has its own website, but again, Nicholas has little choice but to do the vast majority of his business on Amazon's marketplace. He also uses FBA, which means he stores a lot of his inventory in Amazon warehouses and delivers them via Amazon trucks. Without it, he wouldn't be eligible for a Prime badge and would be buried in Amazon search results.
If it doesn't come up as a Prime listing, they never see it because that's the way they search. That's the way that they use Amazon. They only want items that are gonna arrive at their house within 1 or 2 days.
Amazon effectively requires sellers to use its fulfillment. If they don't use its fulfillment, they don't qualify for the Prime badge. If your items are not available for Prime, you essentially don't make any sales on Amazon. So you have to use their fulfillment.
Of the top 10,000 sellers on Amazon, 90% use FBA. One effect this has is that it drives sellers away from using other competitors. They keep an increasingly large amount of their inventory in Amazon's warehouses and tailor their business around Amazon sales. The prospect of selling on rival websites becomes less and less attractive.
That logistics operation effectively becomes a tool for maintaining its e-commerce monopoly.
The fees that sellers pay to stay viable on Amazon are rapidly increasing, jumping almost 50% from just 6 years ago.
The consequences of that are very serious for sellers who now pay $1 out of every $2 to Amazon. So this is effectively a 50% tax. And that in turn inflates prices for consumers.
In the first half of 2023, Amazon spent $82 billion on its world-famous fast shipping operation. Conveniently, over the same period, it also racked up $82 billion in seller fees. Amazon uses seller fees to pay for the fast and free shipping that brings customers to Amazon and squashes competitors. No competitors means nowhere else for sellers to go, which means more subservience to Amazon, a toxic cycle.
The 2 million third-party sellers are kind of like these indentured servants. So as far as furthering the cause of market domination, if they decide to just delete your most popular listing, they just do it.
The FTC case alleges that Amazon biases search results in favor of its own first-party sales, even when it knows third-party sellers are offering higher quality items.
Selling on Amazon is very much like going to a casino. Like ultimately the house always wins. The whole deck is stacked against you in ways that you can't even see.
In recent years, Amazon has started taking advantage of sellers' desperation to stay competitive by offering them yet another service they can pay for: advertising and paid priority listings.
Advertising income is the big new thing that subsidizes all of this. And that number just grows every year.
Nicholas also drew my attention to alphabet soup sellers, most of them based overseas in Asia, that are trademarking random strings of letters and selling the same products under multiple listings as a means of cornering the market. The prevalence of these brands works in Amazon's favor, since it encourages other third-party sellers to pay for advertising to set themselves apart from these fly-by-night manufacturers.
If you have 100 of these or 500 of these, it forces everybody else out of the organic search results. Then those other sellers are faced with either spending the money on advertising to move to the top, or they just go out of business.
The result for buyers is a shopping experience that is dizzyingly confusing, with pages and pages of ads and hardly any way to tell what's real or trustworthy. This brings my investigation full circle. We're finally back at the question of why Amazon is so chaotic, providing in many ways the opposite of the ultra-streamlined, super above-board user experience you might expect from the tech giant.
There's a race to the bottom. What we see on Amazon now is that there's a whole bunch of just cheap junk that lacks quality and is from just a very anonymous type of seller where there's also no customer service.
In that way, sellers and customers are united. Amazon isn't really looking out for the best interests of either of them. It's just looking out for Amazon and this guy.
There's never been a company that has this much power over such a wide part of our economy. There are very few businesses that aren't like now sort of dependent on and subservient to Amazon in one way or another. Companies that make things, companies that need to ship things. It's a kind of private arena controlled by, this sort of godlike entity that determines who wins and who loses.
If Amazon is found guilty in the FTC lawsuit, it could face a fine of nearly $44 billion, which is the statutory maximum, a court order requiring Amazon to change its business practices, which would be a huge relief to people like Nicholas, and most importantly, possibly a breakup of Amazon into smaller companies. In its current state, the company is powerful enough to bend markets to its will, stifling competitors and holding consumers, sellers, and workers captive like a privately run authoritarian government. That's precisely the situation that antitrust law was designed to remedy. If you can't beat them and you can't join them, you gotta break them up. Before you go, please support More Perfect Union by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And if you have ideas for stories, drop them in the comments below.